Hi guys, I've always found it strange how the likes of the BBC will report the front page news of the likes of The Sun and the Daily Express. Completely unprofessional and clearly biased outlets that on a regular basis publish either massive errors or complete falsehoods. BBC political shows have also on many occasions invited people on from right-wing think tanks or from right-wing TV shows who on their own platforms or within their respective organisations have called for the cancellation of the national broadcaster. All the while, the BBC not properly explaining who the guests are and who they represent. This brings us to this shocking clip where BBC journalist Ivan Davis runs away from a serious topic and shuts down an interview with SNP MP John Nicholson when the name Dan Wootton of GB News is brought up. Have a listen.
But I was very interested in the investigation by ByLine Times into Dan Wootton. It was a very good piece of journalism.
Let's not. I don't want to go into unrelated. issues. I just want to ask you whether there's a danger in your position. A danger in your position that Ofcom are kind of you're wanting Ofcom to censor channels that take opinions and give platform to opinions that you really don't like.
I don't want censorship. I want Ofcom to enforce its own rules. And the point I was going to make is you said that the channel had responded by suspending Dan Wootton, and the point I was going to make was that there have been serious accusations about Dan Wootton for some time, which have received remarkably little coverage in the press, and which are worthy of investigation.
That's not what we're discussing here.
Well, it's relevant because he's the presenter on the channel who's now been suspended.
We'll leave it there. John Nicholson.
We'll leave it there. We're not going to talk about Dan Wootton. We're not going to talk about this aspect of GB News. You're on here to answer the questions that I want you to answer and to stick to the narrative that I have presented. Notice at the beginning, the attack was not towards GB News and Dan Wootton. It was actually directed at John Nicholson, the SNP MP. Now, what is John talking about when he says that Ofcom are not enforcing the rules? For example, and John has brought it up on a number of occasions, especially in select committees, how you have Tory MPs working on GB News interviewing fellow Tory MPs. You have situations where a Tory MP who's presenting a show is looking at the camera and delivering a narrative. That is against the rules of Ofcom. This is breaking Ofcom rules, and Ofcom has not enforced those rules. It has not punished GB News over this. It's against the rules to have a sitting MP interview another MP. We have it with Lee Anderson. We have it with Jacob Rees-Mogg. Both of them have shows on GB News where they interview fellow MPs and talk about policies. And on a number of occasions, you have the MP in charge of the show, Jacob Rees-Mogg or Lee Anderson, looking at the camera and delivering a speech, which, as we've said, and as you can check out the select committees, is against the rules. Ofcom is not enforcing those rules. John has not asked for GB News to be censored. He's asked for Ofcom's rules to be enforced. And notice here how the twisting of the situation, the journalist here saying, oh, you want GB News censored. No, he has at no stage he has asked for them to be censored. He's asked for Ofcom to implement the rules that they have written, and they're not implementing when it comes to GB News. Now, it seems that Dan Wootton has been suspended, and Lawrence Fox, or whatever his name is, has been suspended as well. But it's following a huge amount of pressure. They didn't decide, well, actually, you have done a terrible thing, we're going to suspend you straight away. This happened after a massive amount of pressure from the public, from celebrities, from journalists, from members of parliament as well. They have piled the pressure on GB News, and then they finally said, okay, we better get rid of these guys. I don't know if they're coming back or not. They may return at a later stage. But the point here is that you have the BBC holding, an SNP MP to a higher standard than GB News, when GB News is the main point here. This is the point of discussion. What has GB News done, and why is Ofcom not holding them to account? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.